Melissa, thank you so much for being a part of this. For listeners who aren't familiar with you, who you are in the space, the most dreaded question from podcast guest, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, such a broad question. It's like, how do you define yourself as a person? My name is Melissa Valliere, formerly, still Melissa Bumstead. Uh, I, I guess I'm most infamously known for being Chris Bumstead's Christopher to me, sister and married to Ian Valliere. I also competed myself back in the day, which some people may know, some people may not. I was an IFBB figure pro. Um, Now I'm currently a wife, a sister, soon to be business owner, starting a business that will launch next year. Yeah. I don't know, how deep do you want me to go?
Yeah, I love it. I always feel like I hate that question so much, but I also feel had listeners, they're like, can you please, can you make this just an intro so I know, so I can really immerse myself in the guest? No, that was perfect. And I oftentimes I'm like, I don't even know how to answer this. You want the whole story? You want half of it? You want bullet points? It was great. I was trying to explain to my boyfriend, Jordan, who you are, and I think I was explaining oh, she's married to Ian, and I've been a fan of their podcast, and I've seen him kind of move through the industry. But then the second to that was oh, she's Chris Bumstead's sister. He's like, oh, that's huge. I'm like, yeah, but that's not the lens in which I look at her from. Just because I think when you follow someone on social media, I mean, you're, especially someone like yourself who does share, I would say, more vulnerable aspects of their journey and different parts of what it's like to be a competitor, to not be a competitor, and the phases that you go through. As a fan, as a viewer, you gain this, I don't know, this weird sense of connection. You're like, okay, what I'm feeling or similar things to what I've felt, that's not just me. There are other people who seemingly are very successful, who are doing a great job, who feel these things too. And I think it was, I mean, because you competed last, it was 2019, right?
Yes, the Arnold in 2019. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I I don't know if it was 2019. I might have the years mixed up, but it was in that post-show phase, or one of your post-show phases, that you're really honest about it being hard. And I myself, I've never been a competitor who's been like, yeah, this is a cakewalk. It's a very big identity loss getting as lean as you need to, and having expectations and living a very regimented lifestyle, and to then transition out of that. And having competed myself for about 10 years and being a pro in bikini, and seeing how the divisions have evolved, I have gone through what I presume is similar benchmarks, where it's you kind of have to ask yourself, is this really what I want to continue doing? So I guess we're starting from the end. We're doing this reverse order. Tell me about the Arnold prep. What was, I guess, coming out of that and going into such a prestigious show for you after already having so much success? Because at that point, you had competed at the Olympiad already twice, right?
Yes, I did the Olympia in 2017 and in 2018. And then I actually got married at the end of 2018. So 2018 was a really, really big year for me. I did 5 pro shows, and I finally won the Tampa Pro at the end of the season. And that was I would say it was a huge shift in how I saw myself as a competitor, because I always heard oh, you you look so pretty on stage and you look so good on stage, but I never actually felt that I was eligible to be a top Olympian. And when I went into Tampa, it was the biggest figure lineup of the year. I think there was 55 girls, and there was huge names there. And I was like, this is kind of my last chance to actually qualify for this year's Olympia. And I really didn't expect to win. I think with the point system, I needed to get a top 3 to qualify for the O1 points, because I had placed top, I think top 4 in every show that I did that year. So I was really just kind of like, okay, just like get a top 3 and then you can qualify on points. And then when I won the show, it was like such a, like, it just felt like so self-affirming that like I was like, I could be super successful on those big stages, especially the Olympia. So the goal kind of changed from actually just like being able to make it to the Olympia to actually like maybe potentially placing at the Olympia. And I remember it was like August to maybe October that year the Olympia was, and I had never been like so driven and so focused in my life getting ready for a show. And I felt so like powerful, focused, aligned, like so fantastic. And I almost started to like convince myself that I could like be top 5 at the O. And it was something that I like felt so sure of in my body. And I placed 12th that year at the Olympia, and I remember feeling devastated. Like being outside the top 10, I felt like I had like disappointed my family. I felt like there was so much hype around me and that I had like let everyone down. Like there was such a feeling of like shame almost. And I remember my husband looking at me and being like, "You're like top 12 in the world and your big emotion after this is shame. Like that is not right and that's so sad." And I didn't process it at all. I just kind of was like, okay, well, fuck it. Like, let's move on. We're getting married in a month. And then, like, I'll figure this out later. And I just didn't really, I had like a big cry, but I never really actually like dug into why I felt so dissatisfied with a result like that. Because the year before I did the Olympia and I placed 16th, like I placed last. I didn't even get a placing. And I was so much happier the year before. Like I remember being way more satisfied with that placing and that showing. So that probably was the beginning of like the mental state that never really was getting dealt with and like dug into, and I wasn't even like getting curious about why I was feeling like that. I wasn't trying to understand what mattered to me and how I was living and how I was kind of processing. And then we got married and that was amazing. And then I experienced like honestly a pretty big depression after we got married. And then there was shame around the depression because I was like, oh my God, I can't tell anyone I'm depressed after I just got married because they're just going to assume that I like made a big decision, like I regret getting married. Like everyone's just going to think that. When really it was just this like huge, probably dopamine dump from like this massive year of accomplishments and like looking forward to the Olympia and traveling so much and looking forward to you spend years planning a wedding and then all of a sudden it's over and you have those like post-show blues, post-wedding blues, all these things. And my answer to that feeling was to apply for the Arnold. Because I related prepping and getting ready for a show to feeling good about myself. And that to me was the band-aid to like fix everything that I was feeling. And I remember talking to my husband and I applied and he was like, and I had applied the year before, but I didn't get accepted. And I applied and Ian said to me, he was like, "You will get accepted this year." And I was like, "Oh, maybe, maybe not." And he was like, "No, no, I'm telling you, like with your accolades from 2018, like 2019 will accept you." And I still didn't really believe it. I didn't really think about it. And he kind of was like, "I don't think this is a good idea. Like mentally and physically, like you've had a massive year. You need to like give yourself a break." And I did not listen to him. I was just convinced that this was the thing that was going to like make me feel better. And me having the drive of prepping for a show that I got accepted to, like as prestigious as the Arnold, was going to fix everything. And it was actually the opposite. I got accepted and I had to start prep in December. um, which like December is like my favorite month of the year. It's my birthday, it's Christmas. Like I love baking, I love eating, I love connecting with people over like cocktails and food. Like it was like something that I looked forward to every year, and I felt like I wasn't going to have that because I was prepping for a bodybuilding show, and I just like spiraled, and I prepped for the show, and I felt like because I got accepted, I had to do the show. And like back then, people didn't drop out of the Arnold. Like that wasn't a thing. The last couple of years, like you see people dropping out left and right, but like in 2019, it didn't feel like an option to me. So I pushed through the prep. I did not there was little to no effort in the gym, in my cardio. There was lots of cheating on my diet. It was a mess. I wouldn't even step on a scale. I wouldn't take photos. I wouldn't practice posing. My husband was coaching me. I didn't let Ian look at me ever. I didn't even really like take clothes off in the gym. And I just like literally went to Ohio and was like, fuck it, we'll see what happens. And I had my worst showing of my entire career, amateur and professional. I came dead last, and I experienced that feeling of shame and embarrassment all over again, but like 100x. And that put me into an extreme depression that probably lasted 6 months. And yeah, I became a hermit. I didn't leave my house. I gained probably 80 pounds. And it was like a really, really scary, dark time for me. And that's the last time that I competed.
Wow. I mean, like, I just want to say, I appreciate you painting that so vividly for listeners because I think there is this really massive push right now where you see a lot of people enjoying the fun of competing and getting into the sport. And it works out for a lot of people where they just have this very linear trajectory in, winning an amateur show, going to a national show, doing well, hitting a few national shows and, getting their first sponsorship, going and like networking and building all these connections. And it just feels like as a viewer, as a fan or a fellow competitor, you're like, okay, well, like everyone seems to be enjoying this. And it, almost is a shame because I think oftentimes what's missed when someone's making that decision to get into competing is the reality of what you're signing up for. And even someone like yourself who is like objectively very successful in a competitive division, like a very competitive division, it's like there can still be that nature of kind of getting lost in the competition and getting lost in the process of it, which the process itself can be so beautiful and you can gain so much from it, but it doesn't necessarily have to come down to saying yes every single time or even doing what might feel like is the right thing to do or what everyone is expecting you to do, even though as a competitor myself, it's like when you're in that, like if you're competitive, if you're trying to win, like there's no part of you that'll accept that maybe the best thing I can do for myself, maybe the thing my body's begging me to do is actually take a step back from this. The shows that I've done, after I turned pro, I got second at my pro debut to Ashley K, and it was by 1 point. And like for me, I was like, that's basically a win. Like I'll fucking take it. Like I was like, if I can get top 10, that would be amazing. But coming off of that, a few weeks after I turned pro, I was like, wow, like okay, maybe that shift happened. But shortly after, I tore my serratus posing, and I like I couldn't breathe without like severe pain. So I was like going to bed with like ice packs, like literally in a sports bra. Cause I'm like, I don't know how to vacuum. Like I don't know how to hit my poses because like that muscle is now like so restrictive. But I felt like being a new pro, having already like told the judges and signed contracts for 2 more shows, like I went ahead and did 2 other shows a few weeks later. And it was one of like my biggest regrets of like feeling that pressure and letting like almost the formality of like, well, what are they going to say if I don't compete? And looking back, I'm like, no one would have noticed if I hadn't competed. Like, that wouldn't have even been a thing. But like seeing what that did to me afterwards, like, having to grind through a decision that very clearly was not the right decision. I mean, there's so much aftermath that you deal with. Like, you're almost like, I always equate it to credit card debt. It's like you dig that hole deeper and deeper, but like you don't even know what your limit, like your max is. So you could supersede that. You could be just so deep in this hole that then takes 6, 12, 18 months to pay off. And that's like, even if you just look at the physical side, but not even getting into that identity loss and like how much it's going to take to regain that. And I mean, that's like what comes to mind when I hear your experience, your story is that like you, it seems like, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like you're almost chasing like, okay, I'm not going to deal with this. I can disassociate, and that almost feels easier than facing whatever the root of it is, whatever that shame was after the Olympia. But I mean, what you described, like, I think a lot of individuals go through that, but they don't want to speak up and say like, hey, like I actually like sticking with this and seeing out maybe these shows or that next season, that is going to destroy me. Like, that isn't what's actually best for me.
Yeah, I think we get so like deep into commitments and decisions, and like we convince ourselves that like what we're doing is to solve a problem that we think exists, and then you start to kind of realize like you're actually avoiding and you're just running, and like your shit is always going to catch up to you. You know what I mean? And it's so easy to start, especially if you're successful earlier in your career in the fitness industry, and you just like start to see all this potential and you get all this attention and you have all these people telling you that you could be so great, and you just listen and you just keep going and you don't actually think about the potential, like mental negative side effects that are happening that you need to address. Like there is so many positive things that come from competing, but it also needs to be taken like very seriously, because when you're tying your identity to like how you look and these like extreme physical sacrifices, and your success is coming from that, it does something to your brain. And I don't know if like when you're young and you're starting, you actually think about it like that. You're just like, oh, this is fun, and like my body's responding and I look great and I'm getting all this attention. So like let's just keep going, let's just ride until the wheels fall off.
Totally. And I think it's very easy to have that perpetuated by the people around you, because it largely is going to be positive affirmations, probably going to be people telling you like, hey, it's hard, but you just got to push through. And I mean, like, disassociation like that, I think, can help when things get really dark and you're trying to achieve a new level of body fat, or even on the flip side when you're in a growth phase and you're like, okay, like, you know what, we need to not focus on maybe some of these more negative emotions and thoughts around like maybe the weight gain. Maybe the answer is to like put those off to the side. But I think where I saw the biggest athletic development in my own career was deciding like we're going to choose to use that disassociation when it's actually helpful and
Hmm.
not as a cop out.
Hmm. I mean, there's having like you controlling when you're using it, and there's also it controlling you, right? And when you're doing it and you don't even realize that you're doing it, that's when like the decisions that you make start to not be aligned with your values, because you're now not actually making those decisions properly.
Totally. Yeah. I think, so within that scope of like seeing seeing so much change happen from the Olympia, post wedding, post Arnold, what what was the point that, I don't even want to call it that you like, that something like really landed for you, that you were like, it clicked, you were like, okay, I have to dig myself out of this. Was that something that you woke up one day and you felt, or was it like a slow, like kind of pulling yourself out of it, like grind?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. my husband came home from the gym one night, and I think it was like 6 o'clock, and I was already in bed, like ready to go to sleep. And he came into the bedroom and he was just like, "What are you doing? How was your day?" Like he was trying so hard to be positive. He would ask me every day, "Do you want to go to the gym with me today? Do you want to do this today? Do you want to do that today?" And I was like, "No, no, no." And like I wouldn't leave the house. Like my best friend got engaged. She had an engagement party. I didn't go. My other girlfriend had a baby shower. Didn't go. Like I was missing out on all these kind of like key moments in my life because I was so down on myself and didn't want to leave the house. And Ian came home. It had probably been about like 4 months. And I was just like quiet and withdrawn. And he kind of said to me, he's like, "Listen, I know like you don't feel great. Like I totally get it." He's like, "But you're not just going to wake up one morning and feel okay and like go to the gym. Like you're going to have to take action, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but you're going to have to take action before you start feeling better. You're not going to feel better and then take action. You have to do before you start feeling better." And I obviously freaked out. I was like, "First year of marriage and you can't even support me in my depression and you're telling me blah blah blah." I think at one point during this conversation before I freaked out, he said something along the lines of like, "You are not the woman that I fell in love with, and like I can't picture the rest of my life like being with someone that won't leave the house, and like your spark is gone, like who you are is gone, and like you're going to need to do something about it because like I can't picture the rest of my life like being here. I'm 30 years old." And I freaked out. I was so angry at him. I felt abandoned. I felt like he was basically rejecting me and telling me like I don't love you enough to like stick with you through this. And I think we honestly slept in separate rooms that night, and I was just like so angry. And I processed, and the next day I woke up and I was like, he's right. Like, I am not myself, and he does deserve better. I deserve better. And I think I told him that I was not comfortable, like, going to a public gym. I said, I don't want to be seen like this by people who, like, envision me a certain way. And now I was 210 pounds. Like, I was not healthy. Like it was just not okay. And so he actually ended up, I think he contacted his friend who had a home gym, and he was like, "Hey, can we use your home gym for a little bit?" And his buddy was like, "Yeah, sure." So me and him started going and working out at his friend's home gym, and I like slowly started to feel better and like making better decisions, eating healthier. And it's so hard. Like I look back now and I'm like, "Oh, I just like started and then I felt better." But like I do remember picking up like 25-pound dumbbells, and I'm someone that was like shoulder pressing 70s, you know what I mean? Like I was super strong, and I remember picking up 25s and being like, "Oh yeah, this is a good starting point to like shoulder press now that I'm back in the gym." And I like couldn't even lift them. I was trying to do split squats, just body weight, and I was like shaking because my stabilizer muscles were just like so weak and everything was so weak. And I literally had to start, I felt like I was starting from the ground up. Maybe even worse, to be honest, probably weaker. I felt weaker than even when I first started training when I was like 18. But slowly I kind of like just started making better decisions and like treating myself with respect. I started therapy, which changed a lot for me because I started digging into a little bit of my childhood and my past and where all this like shame came from and all this like internalization of like this result is defining of who I am as a person. And that is not real. Like that is not real at all, but how I grew up kind of made that feel very real in my body. So not having success on the outside made me like question my entire self-worth as a human. And working through all of that with a therapist, I like slowly kind of got my groove back and started to feel happier and healthier again.
I mean, that I imagine that had to be such a difficult turning point. I mean, like, to have with someone that, like, you care so much about, you love, but to feel at that point, like what you're describing, to feel rejected, to feel like, shit, like, if they feel that way, then what does inner me feel? Oh, wait, I haven't really checked in. I don't even know. I don't even have a relationship where I can be honest with myself about what I'm going through. And I mean, I really resonate with that. And I love that you're very open about like seeking professional help, which I think a lot of people are scared to do. And it's a big investment. It's a big commitment to make, but it was probably one of the best decisions I made um, in 24 after I got out of a 5-year relationship and I had the awakening of like, I I do not want to end up in the same position in my next relationship where I look back and like I exposed myself. I chose positions that were not safe, that were not healthy. So we're going to do this. We're going to do it humbly and to figure out why the fuck I'm here and why I made these decisions. And that's okay if I don't know. If I don't have the answers, we'll leave that to the professional. But I think especially oh yeah.
I think the most powerful thing that you can have with yourself and with people that you care about is curiosity. And like, it's a very beautiful thing to not have the answers. And it's scary because we always want to be in control. We want to know why we do things and all these things. But like, to give yourself the gift of just being curious and wanting to find out and wanting to know more and wanting to understand and to find a professional that can like lead you through that journey is like such a powerful thing to do. And I don't think enough people are curious enough about why they feel the way they do or why they act the way they do, or even like in relationships. Like, I always want to understand like why my husband is reacting the way he is or why he feels the way he feels, and him the same with me. And like through that, you just learn so much about yourself and your person. And I just think it's so important.
I no, I completely agree. My boyfriend, one of the things that we've been together almost 2 years, one of the things that we discussed early on was both of us continuing therapy, even though the relationship was new, and making sure that that wasn't something that we slip out of or fall out of pattern just because, oh, we're happy now. We have, someone and we're spending a lot of time together and things seem like they're going well. It's like being able to say like, yeah, but I want them to continue to go well. And I want to know what to look for because I haven't done this in almost like this awakened setting where I'm starting to see, oh, those tendencies again. Okay, let's pull these apart and try to understand why they happen.
Yeah, for sure.
I I want to pivot to 2019 because we're talking about like you got into the sport of competing. It was it 2015, 2016?
I think I won my pro card in 2015, and then my pro debut was 2016.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we're talking about a figure division that like over the last 10 years that is it's complete. I mean, from my from my eyes it's completely different. Do you share that sentiment? Has it been something that you're like, yeah, it's
It's
changed?
it's so funny because I when I did my first show, I had Aaron Stern as my background on my phone. And I went back and looked at that photo of Aaron Stern that was my background, and like she wouldn't even place in like the bikini division today. And those are the women that like I looked up to and that I was like, "Oh, I want to look like that." Like, I'm talking like early Nicole Wilkins, Aaron Stern, Candice Keene, like these these physiques are like not even comparable to today's figure division. Like, it's apples and oranges.
No, and I mean like even within the scope of bikini, like I did my first show at 19, like fresh 19 in 2015. And I was 19 years old and told him bikini, yeah, just don't grow your quads, which like I was 120 pounds. I wasn't even that lean. Like I was a child very much by definition. But like being told at that time, like, hey, like, just
don't get
Keep an
any
eye
bigger.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be careful about knee flexion. Like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. With with that, and if it's funny, I forgot because Erin Stern, like she's done, I would say like she's been competitive within the bikini division. That was always something when she was more active, is like, okay, well, how is she gonna fare as the bikini division continues to evolve? And it's, we forget that that look initially that came out in the figure, like, I mean, what that paved the way for. I mean, like now you have physiques in the figure division that I mean, I guess let me back up. When I lived in Los Angeles, I trained at Gold's Gym, as anyone who lives in Venice or Los Angeles does. Um, and there were a lot of professional women's physique competitors that I would talk with on a, you know, daily basis, and see them, ask them what, you know, they're getting ready for. And there's a girlfriend I had who told me, like, she's like, I am at the point where I don't think I can hang in women's physique, so I'm gonna go down to figure. But also talking to the judges, I don't know if I have what it takes to do well here somehow. Just that transition feels like it's not necessarily a slam dunk, which if we look back, you know, to 2020, 2018, 2016, regressing wasn't really a thing you did. Like you had very distinct looks, and now I feel like that gap has become even so much more. So I guess as someone who came up with that early generation figure, I mean, like, even at the time, even in 2016, 17, 18, like in those early years, obviously, like there was still a taboo nature around PED use and how it's unsupplemented. I know in bikini was very hush hush, like almost like you were judged heavily if there were things being used in bikini. What was that like for you in figure? Like, what was really the culture around supplementation?
It's interesting because when I started competing like as an amateur, it it wasn't really something that I thought about. I didn't really educate myself fully on it. I was just like, "Oh, I'm going to use a little bit of Anavar and I'm going to do a show." That's kind of just what it was. Um and then I started to get a lot of like negative comments from people like locally, like not people that knew anything about bodybuilding or competing or whatever. And it affected me a lot. Um, After I won my pro card, think, I don't remember really giving a shit, to be honest. Because at that point, I was like, I don't know what it was like in bikini, but like, I maybe this is ignorant. I don't think there's any figure competitors that are natural. And back then, I didn't think that either, to be honest. I just thought that it was something that people did. Um, and honestly, I was under the impression that most competitors probably used a lot more drugs than I ever chose to use. Because I was always too scared to get too big, and I was always very scared to lose femininity. Like that was something that I was like very stressed out about from the beginning. Because I think in like you started to see a shift in figure, like 2017, 2018. Like there was a shift happening, and I just remember getting very gun shy about all of that. And I also was always coached by Ian, so it was always a very collaborative effort, and he always really like respected the things that I cared about and the things that I valued in myself, and we would never push boundaries to be successful competitively and cross those lines of losing femininity. I did work with a different coach once, and I remember him suggesting some other drugs, and I just remember being like so uncomfortable because I was like, I don't know what these are. Not that like maybe Anavar honestly isn't even the right choice. I don't know. There wasn't as much like now you go online and people are talking about HRT protocols for women and like using test is better, like all these things. That wasn't a thing back then. No one talked about anything. And you just were told to listen to your coach and figure it out. Like that's really what it was. Right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, in 2015, I think I was that annoying, proud natty who like was like just very. I wouldn't even say outspoken, but just like it meant something to me at the time. I think also because I self-coached and sure it's just bikini, but for me, like it meant like it was like an accomplishment, like to
Of
do this like
course. And
big task.
it's not just bikini. Like every division I think honestly takes the same amount of effort, sacrifice, and commitment.
And I think at the time when I started learning more about, I think I'm trying to remember in college there were people. There's like a gym drug dealer who like asked me if I wanted Anavar, and I remember being so or asked me like what I was cycling, and I just didn't really understand. I was very ignorant with it. Um, but once I had done a few more shows and once I had started talking to other competitors, I realized like, oh, okay, like there are people, even in bikini, there are people taking different things, different fat burners. But I was fortunate that I had people similar to yourself who were other bodybuilders, individuals who were like, you're 19 years old. Like you if you want to make that decision, like grow into it, but you have a lot of natural potential and like, ride that out because like once you make that decision, you can't really go back. You're not going to want to be honest. Um so it wasn't until 2020 I had taken some time off competing. I went like I got my first job out of college and I was really pumped on like I want to go all in here and like really like I don't know, just put bodybuilding on the back burner, but it wasn't until in 2020 that I was like, "Okay, let's do some handbar." Like, that was I think I had taken, like, a 4-year hiatus, and I was like, "I think I wanna get back into this," and, I've done it natural, I've built a good amount of muscle, let's just see. But it wasn't until that point that I started really, I would say, taking it as seriously as I wanted to, um, because I was like, "Oh, these things they come with a cost, and, like, if I'm gonna be using this and when I turned pro, I also felt the responsibility, like, I'm probably gonna use this regularly or use things regularly, so I need to take ownership of my decisions, and if I don't understand what these things are doing, then I can't really be informed." But yeah, I love that you had that kinda guidance early on around having the respect around your decisions of like, hey, I don't know, and if I don't know, like I don't really want to push it. I don't want to expose myself unnecessarily. Uh, I feel like nowadays, like I guess let me back up. When I started posting about PED content, which was like, I mean, I was working with John Jewett. I was part of his J3U coaching and like he was very much a mentor in my corner at the time and I think for like a year he was like this is becoming more and more of a problem, like you understand these things, you should educate people on it, and if not you, like who, like because you're a pro, like you have come up, but like also people are going to use these things incorrectly. So why don't you start speaking a little more publicly about it? And once I did, like I knew it was an issue. I knew even in 2020 that like there was a lot of misuse and a lot of people who were getting really hurt by using things with that mentality that I also was told too. Hey, trust your coach. Like just listen to what they say. Don't ask questions. If you don't want to listen to them, don't work with them. But it wasn't until I started speaking out, and not really like, "Oh, don't use drugs." It was more like, "Hey, just understand these things can change you, and, like, I don't know if you do, so if you don't, just PSA." And once I started doing that, I realized, wow, there's a lot of women who don't know that there's a potential for virilization. Like these things, once they happen, there's not a lot you can really do to turn back the clocks. And I mean, I don't know if it's the same for you. I'm very curious, but I saw a lot of women coming up that I was competing with in 2015, 2016, who when I kind of jumped back in the circuit in 2020, see them at shows and we talk and I'd be like, their voice is completely different. Like they're different people entirely. And a lot of them, I mean, being in their 20s, early 30s, I'm like, I don't know how many of them would make that same decision if they knew from the jump that like, hey, this is the risk we're taking. It's something that you don't really have the ability to undo.
Yeah, I think what happens is that things happen quickly and things spiral quickly and there's so many factors that go into it, right? Because like even if you are educated, even if you do think and you do your research and you're like, okay, I'm only going to do 5 milligrams of Anavar for 8 weeks and that's going to be okay. Like, you also don't know if what you're taking is just Anavar. Like, there are so many things that you're putting, it's a risk you're taking. And there are changes that can happen very quickly that are irreversible. And I don't think people understand that. I also think there's a lot of, like, I remember I was doing a meet and greet at the Arnold, and a girl came up to me and was like, hey, like, I want to be a figure pro and you're my idol. And I have this coach and he has me running, I feel like she said like Mastron or something. And he told me that this is what you use. And I was like, wait, me? Like my name? And she was like, yeah, he said, this is what Melissa Bumstead uses. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, how would he know what I use? And why is he saying that? Like, it's one thing if a coach is like, all the pros do this, so you have to do it. But she told me her coach had specifically used my name. And I was like, listen, I don't know if he's like going on Reddit and seeing, I have no idea, but like, no, I've never, and I don't really know much about that. I know my husband is a bodybuilder and he uses Mastron, but that's all I know about Mastron. And like, there's just so much danger, especially with young girls in their late teens, early 20s that hire a reputable coach and they just want to become successful. And it's, I would argue that most of the top successful people are not using as much drugs as like people are saying that they're using. You know what I mean? And I think it's, if you have someone that's trying to convince you to do something to get results or to use something, that is like a massive red flag to me that would make me run in the complete opposite direction.
You brought up, I mean, so many good points, but yes, I want to close on that. Like, I want to close that loop. Like, a coach trying to convince you, like, if they're I don't know. I always think of relating it to sex as like if your boyfriend's trying to convince you to have sex, like, what is happening? Why are we in this position? Like, that shouldn't be something that like someone's trying to pull you across the finish line for. And it's talking about drugs and sex, but largely with the drugs, it's like I this past year, like, I got ready, I started prepping and I got to the point where I was in that like window of like, okay, do we finish this off or do we call it? And the thing that really made me pause was I was doing a lot of consults with other bikini pros from the biggest teams in the bikini division. And what these girls were telling me were that their coach was telling them, if you're not like if you're serious about advancing yourself and even just like holding where you are in the pro division, it's a minimum of 10, 15 milligrams your entire season. It's a minimum of SARMs. It's a minimum of Nolvadex. And I'm like, that is discouraging because for me, like, I'm like, I've used 5 milligrams of Anavar, like at the end of prep, like just a little sprinkle. And it's like, okay, like that's
Also, like, who chooses that number and who says that that's the same for every single body? That is fucking insane to even think that you can put a blanket statement out like that. Like, that's insane to me.
well, and until like to me it lands so it like as such a manipulation tactic because there's no context around what is that person's future like you mentioned genetically, what is their potential, even with drugs aside, even with the drugs, even you have them on something that's a little more heavy handed, like what is the best they're probably going to place this year, because it's just not standardized at all. And particularly in bikini, like you have all these scapegoats around placing. So it's like, well, we want to, give you the best chance to succeed. But the drugs in themselves, like that's not going to guarantee you a placing like that. There's a lot of drug use, frankly, that I think is misuse and used to compensate for really shitty preps and really poorly designed training programs. And it's something like I think a lot of athletes kind of fall into that trap thinking, well, I'm told either by my coach or other competitors, like, this is just what we do. So there isn't really even a question or an ability to give pushback because it's like I haven't met a competitor who doesn't do this, or every coach I've worked with has said like, yeah, you don't really have a chance unless you're going to. So I guess like really in that realm, I also wanted to come back to this too. I share the sentiment. Like I have clients who want to compete in figure, who want to compete in wellness, and I tell them like, okay, we need to decide, are we trying to compete to be competitive? That's a whole conversation. Or are we competing because that's the division we identify with and we like and we appreciate the look and like the process of building that physique? Because for I think many individuals, it's not just drug use. It's a lot of drug use in cases that for certain people, it's like even that isn't going to get them to be the best in the world. Like that's a pretty big gap we have to close. So I guess with that, like for competitors who are in the mix right now, who are listening to this, what would be the advice really around the decision making? I guess even like lending to your own decision making around that first cycle or I would say like just exposure based on the level you were at
Yeah.
for those.
I think I truly believe that your how you want to look and how you want to feel in your body is should always supersede like your want to be successful in a division. Because at the end of the day, like your body is your home. And I started figure because I loved Nicole Wilkins. I was like, you're so beautiful. I loved Erin Stern. I was like, she's stunning. She's muscular and strong and shapely, but she's also feminine and still small. And like, I don't know. It just was like, to me, it was muscle Barbie. And that's like why I chose figure. When that started to change and the women started, in my opinion, to become a lot more bulky and hard and muscular and less feminine, I had to make a decision. Am I going to chase success or am I going to chase what I'm attracted to and how I want to look and what I want to see when I look in the mirror? And I mean, that eventually led to me retiring, to be honest, because the two didn't line up anymore. It was either choose success and keep growing and getting a bigger back and a thicker back and a more detailed glutes and more detailed hamstrings, which at the end of the day equals more muscle. You're not going to get more detail, at least at the conditioning that I was competing at, without putting on more muscle, or be comfortable in your own skin, because I already felt like I was too big and too muscular. I was already having to, in an off season, I was having massive body dysmorphia because I would put on a little bit of body fat and all of a sudden I'd be shopping in extra large, double extra large clothing. And that was fucking with my head. I didn't like how I looked. So I think when you're making decisions of like what class you want to compete in or why you're competing, it's so important to remember that like what is actually real is your experience in your own skin and in your own body. And like placing first is like a very fleeting moment and a fleeting feeling and a fleeting time. It's not real. Like that's not going to follow you for the next 10 years. Like you in your own body and how you feel about yourself is what's going to stay with you. So it's hard because especially once you start and then you end up successful, it's very easy to be like, oh, well, I can keep going and then maybe I can win. But at what cost?
Well, and then there's even the fact of like, okay, winning, it doesn't end with just winning. And typically then opens this door and then like we're talking like you get to the very top. It's like you got to retain that, or you're likely going to want to retain that. So, what does that look like? Is that continued use? And I want to go back to what you said, even about like the body dysmorphia and like being very intentional with like, I have to live in this body at not shredded, whether that's 5 pounds, 10 pounds for me. 10 pounds is not that much over stage weight for me. So, like, that still takes quite a bit of work. But, like, even when we're talking about 15 pounds, we're talking about a higher body fat percentage. It's like there was a point, like, I would say, like, in 2020, I wellness was new, and I did wellness in bikini. I just like when I came back to competing, I was like, let's fuck it, let's try it both. Like we'll see. And I swear to God, this show had to be so dark. It was like a muscle contest show and like a hookah lounge. Like I'm pretty sure they just couldn't see us, but like I did very well in wellness. I got the overall and I got second in bikini. And the coach I was working with at the time, he's like, whatever one you want to do, whatever one you want to do, I'm on board with it. He's like one of my best friends. So we had that kind of relationship where he's like, yeah, like it can be either way and I'll support you. But the thought I had was I carry a lot of body fat in my legs. And that's where it's going to come on in the off season. Like there's no question about it. And already, even with like very dainty legs, like it already does like make me feel self-conscious when I'm not shredded. And that idea of like adding circumference, adding like a lot of thickness, and then like clothes not fitting the same, and like even, yeah, like feeling curvier, but also knowing I might like the look of curvy on other girls, but at the same time, that's not a look I can pull off comfortably. I'm not used to it. Like it's just not me. And I'm sure with what you're describing with upper body, I'm sure listeners in the bikini division even have felt that in the last recent years. Because I know for me, like with broad clavicles, I'm like, I don't want to add any biceps or triceps. Like delts are already like the thing that people comment on, like Gen Pop people, they're like, oh, you do CrossFit, like your upper body's jacked. I Teenage boys are like, I want delts like yours. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go kill myself. Like,
Yes, so
cool.
triggering. You're like, oh my God, don't, yeah. And
Yeah.
they think they're complimenting you,
Yeah.
realistically.
It's so genuine. But I'm like,
Yeah.
that's bikini. Like, that's not even like you add the thickness to the back. And like, I already, people know it's like I wear extensions when I record typically because I'm trying to hide my traps because it's like more back muscle. It can develop differently. And that's where I want to clarify for any listeners who are like, man, she's like really shitting on like Alt's muscular development. It's not that it might not be right for someone. It's just like I know for me, like being denser and getting denser over the last 10 years, like I've felt that at higher body fat percentages and I've had to like kind of adjust and really consider like, okay, like how do I want to look when I'm not on stage, when I'm not in a fat loss phase? Because that that's the body I gotta live in. Like that's the one I have to walk around in and receive the comments, positive or negative. So I think for listeners, like that's such a good point you made that like if it's not something you want to like fully commit to and you know for a fact that you want, it's okay to pause and just like think about it and see like, okay, what is the experience actually like, not what someone looks like in the really like goon lighting in a sports bra when they've got a pump. Like, what does it look like every other second of the day outside of that?
I also think it's okay to like compete for other reasons than just to win. And like, if you're just competing to win, then you need to understand that you might end up being uncomfortable in your body one day because you're not building your body based on your preferences. You're building your body based on the judge's preferences. And that's fine if that's what you choose to do, but like you accept the consequences, you bear those consequences. I was never somebody that was going to sacrifice how I wanted to look for a judge to tell me that I got a first place trophy. It just wasn't worth it to me. And even then I probably went a little bit too far in the last year when I was getting ready to come back to the stage in 2021. And I probably put on 5 to 10 pounds of muscle on my back. And listen, did I think it looked sick when I was in the gym, like 2 weeks out conditioning? Yes, it looked amazing. I looked so cool. It looked like I looked like a superhero. The rest of my life, was I happy about it when I put on 15 pounds and like my clothes wouldn't fit? Was I happy about it? Absolutely not. And like after that, I was like, oh, I'm retiring. Like I'm not doing this anymore because like this isn't how I want to feel. This isn't making me happy anymore.
I love that you brought that point up too, is like you you can compete and fall in love with the process and you can get on stage and present your best self, but also have boundaries around type of physique you want to compete with. And I think it's great if you can do that, you know, before you ever get into the competing circuit, before you ever start your first prep. Um, But for competitors who've already, made the jump and they're kind of in this, gridlock of like, well, I don't really like where this division's going, or I don't know if I'm willing to do what's needed to, progressively do better. You can always take a step back. Like you can always like it's your, as cheesy as it sounds, like it's your journey, it's your body that you have to live in. And like, I mean, most importantly, like even if you build it to the judge's criteria, it doesn't guarantee shit. Like it doesn't. It's such a subjective sport, and like you literally can't control how others show up. So it's like, I don't know, switching gears to really enjoying the process. Like when I was able to actively feel myself doing that in a prep, like I just felt a lot more anchored to, I don't want to say less about the outcome, but more of like what I could learn through these experiences and through these phases, because they became just that. It was less about like getting on stage and like seeing how it shakes out, but rather like, okay, how can I ask more of myself if that's what I want to do right now?
Well, I also feel like when you start to have that mindset, like every sacrifice or every hardship that happens during the journey doesn't feel like it's against you. You look at it as like an opportunity to learn and to grow, and it almost feels like a rewarding challenge instead of like, oh, I have to do this, or oh, I hurt my tibia and I can't do cardio as hard, and oh, poor me. Like that's not what it's about. It's actually about like learning how to pivot and learn it and growing through a process. And it's so much less about the outcome and more about who you become on your path to get to the outcome. And I think a lot of people lack patience, and I think a lot of people lack presence in those moments. And I think that's when you kind of start to miss the point of bodybuilding, to me at least.
No, I love that. And that really, I think because it is such an ongoing tool, skill that I've learned, like it feels better to be more present now versus looking back to where like I would feel like I was such a control freak. Like several of my preps where it's just like it felt like, oh, I was so annoying. Like thinking back, I would just like I wanted to do all the data, all the science shit, and it's like, yeah, but why? Like, where is the return in this if I'm not actually learning from it, if I'm not in this body, if I'm not, really taking these challenges as, like you said, as opportunities, if I'm just stressed and anxious and like negative the whole time, like what are we working towards? So Melissa, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. I would love to personally like shuttle people to your Instagram and YouTube. Um,
My YouTube is kind of dormant, but maybe it'll be back one
yeah.
day.
Where can where can people tune into your content? Because I know you do a lot of stuff with Ian at times. Um,
Yeah, you'll probably find me on my husband's YouTube channel more, and his YouTube is Ian Valliere. My Instagram is Melissa Bum, or you can just search Melissa Valliere because that's my married name. And listen, I do have a podcast, or I did have a podcast called Giver with my sister-in-law Courtney that I really, really love dearly, and I do hope that it comes back soon. But yeah, that's really it. I pop up here and again, you know?
and no, I think this has been great. I know listeners will find this valuable. Again, thank you for the time. You guys, thank you for listening. As always, I will see you in the next one.